Hello lovely people, it's Cara here and I am, as ever, so mad. I hope you've had a lovely week and got some sewing done wherever you are in the world. And today I'm sharing with you five-ish, maybe more, top tips on how to make your fabric go further. Yes, you heard me right. You've got precious fabric in your hand and you want to know how you can make the most of every millimetre or inch of it. So let me share with you some of my top tips. Now, this is not an exhaustive list and I cannot wait to hear from you in the comments below on your top tips for how to make the most out of your fabric. How wonderful would that be as a community if we share all of our top tips? So I've got a list here and these are in no particular order, but I just thought to myself in my 5 series that I've sort of undertaking, I thought, yeah, it's fair enough to share jackets and things like that. And well, actually, I haven't shared jackets yet, but maybe coming to a film near you soon. But I just thought, why not share some top tips in amongst the mix of these things? And fabric, oh, you know I love it. I know you love it. So I thought, I can share my experience here because not all of you out there have been sewing as manically as me. Actually, are there any of you out there that sew as manically as me? But I know a lot of you just starting your sewing journey, but also those of you who've been on the sewing journey for a really long time might have always been told to do things in a certain way, and that's what I'm here for, to share my experience and maybe some different ways of doing it. So let's get started. I think that one of the biggest differences you can make to making your fabric go further is choose how you prepare it and cut it out. There are lots of different savings that you can make here, and I've chosen to show you an example using, this is a Maison Fauve tweed, sorbet tweed viscose, and I've actually picked out, of all the examples I could have shown you, this is actually the Zenith blouse that I recently made. Now, in majority of pattern companies, there are lots of reasons why they choose to give you lay plans in certain ways, and I have to say, from a graphics point of view, showing you the pattern pieces set out like this would be the simplest way of doing it. And very traditionally in pattern companies, they'll have you show the lay plan for your pattern pieces with the selvages together. So you fold it down the long end, either right sides or wrong sides together, the jury's out on that, and then you'll have your selvages here, which is what I've got here. So this is actually the back piece of the Zenith blouse, and imagine this was going to be cut on the fold, for example. You would place it against the fold, obviously, and then you find yourself with all of this fabric here left spare, if you like. Now it's not spare because this is just one piece out of many, but this is where my first tip is for you. Do not fold your fabric so that it's salvage to salvage. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, I did that on fast time, and obviously you'd want to spend more time than I have on grain line and all that sort of thing. That's information for a different day. But you can see what I've done there. I've literally folded over enough of the fabric to literally meet the edge of the pattern piece, so that I've got all of this workable fabric left to work with. Now this isn't about necessarily, no, it is about making the most of your fabric, of course, that's the point in the video, but it's about the usable amount of fabric that you are left with. Now if you imagine if I'd left the salvage folded right sides together, you end up with 2 pieces of fabric that are the remainder of the width of fabric long. What I've done by changing this so that it's folded just to the size of the pattern piece is enabled an opportunity for much more usable fabric. That is the point of what I'm doing here. So that's tip number 1. Fold your fabric to the amount of fold you need for the pattern piece, not salvage to salvage. I'm going to stay focused on preparation for pattern as well, and the next tip I've got for you is, probably sounds really obvious, but cut out the right size of pattern piece in the first place. It's curious, I've been working with a group of different seamstresses in my work as an assisted sewer or sewist or a coach, if you like. And I was very curious, as actually a number of the ladies were cutting out the fabric and the pattern much bigger than they needed to. So you need to focus on the size you need to make, and that's done principally by taking a bust, waist and hip measurements. You then need to pay close attention to the finished garment measurements and see how much ease there is in your pattern, because depending on the sort of garment that you want, you really want to be focusing on your finished garment measurements being somewhere in a level of ease with your actual garment measurements. So for example, this house by Atelier Jupe, and the ease in this garment was massive. So it's designed to have an oversized fit, but I really wanted to have something that was close fitting, and in actual fact I sized down 2 sizes from this. I'm going to sneeze, and I probably could have gone even more, excuse me. And as you can see, I've still got quite an oversized top here, but had I not focused on the finished garment measurements, I would have wasted so much fabric. So tip number 2, check your measurements, check the ease in the garment, and focus on the finished measurements versus your actual size to see what size you would need to make. Tip number 3, and this piece of fabric I'm working with here is a perfect example of this. Let me just move this away. I would utterly encourage you to have fun with your fabric. Now, actually, before I put it away, this is a grain line, and so this is the pattern designer's vision of how you would place this pattern piece onto the fabric. Now, there are definitely lots of fabrics where you would need to pay attention to the grain line. Something with a two-way stretch, or a two-way stretch in particular, you would definitely need to have the grain line going in the direction of that stretch, or as it turns out to be the fabric, because your garment is going to need to move in that way. Velvet, again, or something with a nap, you definitely need to pay attention to the grain line, because that's going to affect how your fabric actually sits. However, on something as beautiful and as usable in any direction as this fabric, if I just turn it, see these beautiful stripes here? So with the selvage, if I just go back as I was a second ago, it looks to me like you're going to be encouraged to be having your stripe facing down, because your fabric will principally be folded like that, and you'll have a stripe going downwards. However, how much fun could you have if you changed the grain line direction and therefore had your stripes going on the vertical? That would be amazing. And you'll often hear the term pattern Tetris when people are trying to make the most out of their fabric, and that's really where they've played around with the pattern pieces in order to make them fit pretty much onto their fabric. And then the other thing you can do is, particularly with the pattern placement of things like this, is use your facings, use your pocket linings, and make the most out of the pattern Tetris. Because really, on pockets and on facings, it's not critical to have your grain line going in direct with the selvage. In fact, if you are off grain, sometimes that gives you a little bit more stretch, because you more or less could be working off a bias, and therefore on facings and pockets, that actually could be a usable feature. But just in the very simple form, if you use your facings, for example, I've got a facing in this because it keeps popping out, which is driving me mad. So my facing here, I definitely could have pattern Tetris that and placed it into available pieces on my pattern piece. And so for that reason, when I'm cutting out, I leave pockets, unless they're huge pockets, but and I'll come on to other ways of saving fabric in a moment, but things like the facings and so on, I would leave till last, do your big pieces, and then you can pattern Tetris the rest to make the most of your fabric. So tip number 3, have some fun with your pattern placement and with facings and pockets and so on. Make the most of your fabric by placing them in the pieces that are left over. Before I move away from the have some fun with your pattern placement, the other thing I would say about facings, if you're using the original fabric, don't be afraid to cut where it's quite often back facings are cut on the fold, which could mean you need to have quite a big piece of fabric. Don't be afraid to cut those on a single and then just leave a seam allowance and sew those together. It's on the inside of your garment. Provided you sew that really well and iron open your seam allowance, no one is going to know. And again, it's a great way to use up your fabric or make your fabric go further. So I actually brought some examples of how else you can make your fabric go further. I'm just going to put my notebook there because there's some additional spots on it. And that is to use remnants to make your original garment stand out, but also to make the most of your original fabric by not using it on facings. Now this is the Pilar jacket by Maison Fauve. So I just wanted to show you that here, and you can see here that I've really made the most of the outer fabric by not using up that on facings. I've also done the same for the pockets, I think, yeah. So the pockets here you can see there on the inside, and I think also, yes, on the pocket lining as well. So I'm really maximised my main fabric, and then ironically actually I've got the matching jeans on here, so that really does help you to make the most of your fabric. The other way, I'm just going to glamorously throw that over there, I'm going to make sure it doesn't fall off, is to use shop bought bias binding. Now this is a lovely example from the Specky seamstress. Just has the most beautiful array of bias binding. I won this recently, it was really sweet. And because bias is cut, bias tape, sorry, is cut on the bias, so at a 45-degree angle, and so therefore by nature it takes up an enormous amount of fabric on your original cutting. You can of course make continuous bias, and therefore a very small square of fabric makes a lot of bias binding, and that would be a really good way of making your fabric go even further. So a tip for this would be either use shop bought bias binding or to make a continuous bias binding using a very small amount of fabric, and not just that one strip that there comes in your pattern piece, because you'll put that onto your fabric and think, oh, that's taken up loads of space. I'll give you another example here. This is coming to you on a video soon. This is actually the Daiquiri dress by Maison Fauve. Oh, just a quick glance at the back there. I love this shell design. It creates this lovely ripple on the back. But I actually elongated this dress. When I was wearing it, I thought actually that's exactly the length I want it to be. So A, I don't want to use up more fabric than I need to, but B, I'm going to pop a bias binding on the bottom of the hem so I don't lose anything of the original length of my dress, and it neatly finishes this to the inside. I also, for exactly the other reason, is I didn't want to use up more of this lovely fabric than I needed to, so I popped a shop bought bias binding on the inside. I did, however, use the original facings, and actually I think sometimes facings could be more fabric friendly in terms of consumption than the bias binding because of that one long strip on the bias. But I hope that helps. So tip number 4 is to use shop bought or clever conversions for your bias binding, or make the most of it using continuous bias. Hiya, it's only me. I wonder if you could do me a couple of favours, please. Could you, whilst you're there, just give me a quick thumbs up? But also, if you haven't had a chance to, then please do subscribe to my channel, because I absolutely love to know that you are with me on my YouTubing journey. Thank you. My last tip, and these are in no particular order, is literally to make the most of your fabric. Mad one to have last, but what I mean by that, and I've got lots of examples to show you because I'm always doing this. So you've gone to the trouble of pre-washing your fabric, you've laid your fabric out really nice, you may or may not have ironed your fabric so that it's all looking at its most pristine. You then go to cut out your top and you've got some left over. So my last top tip for you is to plan ahead and cut out more than one project. so that you don't end up with a remnant in a bin or a box somewhere, that you forget how much is there, you forget the suitability of the item. And you will know, if you've been here a long time, and if you have, thank you very much, but you will know that I love a cord. So I've got some examples here to show you. So I made recently a few of the Derwent trousers. So here we are. These are the Derwent trousers by Wendy Ward. But in order to make the most of that fabric, I immediately cut out at the same time an LB pullover. Okay, this also is another example of how to make your fabric go further, because I didn't actually have enough fabric, and therefore I cut the back of this in 2 pieces in order to pattern Tetris it, and therefore make the most of this fabric. Had I not done that, I'd have been left with, because this top actually takes pretty much less than a metre, but because I didn't need it to be in any particular massive piece, because I was cutting 2 pieces for the back, and you could have easily cut 2 pieces for the front, making it even more user-friendly in that way. But you could also cut your, I've cut this on the fold, so I've got 1 seam at the back, but you could have cut this in 2, and therefore I've used up some really odd shaped pieces of fabric. I also recently made and absolutely love the Thea trousers by Tilly and the Buttons. Ta-da! And another example here of how to make your main fabric go further, as I said before, is use a different fabric for the pockets, because these are quite fabric hungry actually, and by using a different remnant for the pockets, it meant I had enough left over to make some shorts. Ta-da! So that was really great use of fabric. And the last example, again, this was 1 piece of fabric that I got from a D-Stash account, and I made the trousers. That's the back of the trousers. I made the Derwent trousers. Again, I know it's catching. Just ask Sarah from Sew Sarah Style. I made another LB pullover top. Ta-da! It's lovely fabric. And then I had already pre-calculated that I would have enough left over to make a matching cardigan. And again, had I left this and just folded it up and put my remnants box, I would have wasted the fabric. Not wasted exactly, but I know I'd have forgotten how much I had there, and I probably would have lost the creative flow to make something out of it. And so I basically made the cardigan the length of the fabric that is left, and therefore it's about hip length, which is perfect. So there you go. I hope you found that useful. I just really wanted to share some benefit of experience with how you can make your fabric go further. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a relatively short video, but I just want to get your creative juices flowing of thinking, okay, so I don't have to do things as they say in the pattern book. I can fold my fabric over as I need to. I can have some fun with the pattern placement and make the most of my fabric by moving the pattern pieces around. I didn't add, and I should now, that often cutting on the single and not on the fold also maximises the fabric. You've probably seen that's what I was heading towards when I fold my fabric just to the perfect amount. I then use the rest in a single fold, generally speaking, or just flip the fabric up on itself. That's another really effective way of making the most of your fabric. Think about using shop bought bias binding or continuous binding as an option to maximise your fabric. Think about using different fabrics for your pockets, again to maximise your fabric. And then finally, whilst you've got your fabric ready to go, cut out as many projects as you can using that piece of fabric on the table in the zone. And you could also do knickers if you're cutting out jersey. You can make little headbands, you can make bowl cozies, you name it, you can make the most of it. And you literally could cut out, if you had a template of your favourite gift bag, for example, you can have yourself a stash of cut out items ready for later in the year, for Christmas or birthdays and so on, so that again they're just not languishing in the bottom of a remnants bin somewhere. So please give me a thumbs up, Share with me in the comments below what your top tips are on how to make your fabric go further, because there are loads and I've probably missed some really big ones. So help me out and comment below. But in the meantime, please subscribe to my channel. I absolutely love having you here and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care everybody. Bye bye.